Today we're dealing with a very important chapter. The name of this chapter is Sexual Reproduction in Flowering Plants. This is the second chapter in the grade 12 syllabus for biology in CBSE. So there are a lot of questions that are asked from this chapter over the years. Let's look at some of them. So this is the first question. The pollen tube usually enters the embryo sac. A, between the egg cell and synergid. B, by directly penetrating the egg. C, between one synergid and antipodal cell. D, by knocking off the antipodal cells. So, which of these is the correct answer? Now, before we begin investigating, it's worthwhile to note that the pollen tube enters through the micropylar end whenever it tries to break into the embryo sac. So whatever way it has gotten through the ovule or the ovary, through the embryo sac, it's through the micropylar end that the pollen tube goes in, and that is because of the filiform apparatus. So having known that, let's look at the following options. Option D is by knocking off the antipodal cells. Now remember, the antipodal cells are the chalazial end, while the pollen tube enters through the micropylar end. So this option D is incorrect. Now what about option C, between one synergid and antipodal cell? So first of all, that's not possible because the synergids and the antipodals are opposite to each other. And suppose if that meant through the side walls of the embryo sac, then that is also not possible because the pollen tube always enters through the micropylar end. So option C is incorrect. What about option B, by directly penetrating the egg? Now, the egg sits above egg sits near to the synergids in the micropylar end. So, therefore, this option, that is directly penetrating the egg, is also incorrect. The first thing that the pollen tube comes into contact when it tries to break into the embryo sac are these things, the filiform apparatus. The filiform apparatus is the apparatus that guides the pollen tube into the egg cell. So therefore, by directly penetrating the egg is incorrect. So option B is also incorrect. The right answer is option A, between the egg cell and the synergid. So you have this area here that is covered by the filiform apparatus, and the pollen tube enters through it, and then it releases its gametes. One of the gametes move on to meet with the egg, and the other move on to meet the polar nuclei. So option A, between the egg cell and synergid, is the correct option. Let's look at the next question. Double fertilization involves. So we have four options which describe double fertilization. Let's look at each of them. First of all, it says option A, fertilization of egg by two male gametes. Now, if this was to be done by two male gametes, then the ploidy would be 3n, but that is incorrect because for the next generation, the ploidy always stands to be 2n, even after sexual reproduction or fertilization. So therefore, option A is incorrect. Now, next, fertilization of two eggs in the same embryo sac by two sperms brought in by one pollen tube. This statement is incorrect, and there are two parts of this that are incorrect. Number one is fertilization of two eggs. One embryo sac has only one egg cell. And the second thing is two sperms brought by one pollen tube. Now that part is correct because both the sperms are brought in by one pollen grain. One pollen grain contains two sperms. But then because of the fact that it says two eggs, option B is incorrect. What about option C, fertilization of the egg and the central cell by two sperms brought by different pollen tubes? This statement is incorrect. Now let's look at each part. The first part says fertilization of the egg and the central cell. Now this is what we refer to as double fertilization because both the central cell and the egg cell are getting fertilized by two sperms. The second part of this, however, is incorrect, brought by different pollen tubes. The correct answer is by the same pollen tube because one pollen grain contains two male gametes, and so therefore when the pollen grain expands to form the pollen tube, the two gametes are present in the same tube. And that is why option D, fertilization of the egg and the central cell by two sperms brought by the same pollen tube, is the correct answer. So option D is the correct option. Now let's look at the next question. In which one of the following combinations, so the combinations are given from A to D, so these are the options, the number of chromosomes of the present-day hexaploid wheat is correctly represented? So what do you mean by saying that wheat is hexaploid? It means that wheat has 6n number of chromosomes, so therefore the total value for today's wheat is 42, so 6n equals 42, so therefore n equals 7. 7 times 6 is 42, by the way. So we consider this hexaploid combination to be diploid because in this hexaploid condition, it has the complete set of chromosomes. And so therefore, if you were to talk about the haploid portion of the present-day wheat, so in this case, haploid will be referring to the half the amount, half the set of chromosomes, which in this case will be equal to 3n. 3n means 3 times 7, that is equal to 21. So therefore, in the haploid chart, the haploid portion of the chart, 21 would represent the correct value because hexaploid wheat is considered diploid when it has 6n and haploid when it has 3n, because diploid means complete set of chromosomes and haploid means half the amount of chromosomes. So therefore, option D stands out to become the correct option. Now, what are so because of this one option, we found out the correct answer. But for the sake of understanding, what are monosomic, nullisomic, and trisomic? Now, trisomic means one extra chromosome is present in the genetic makeup. So, for example, in wheat, if you have 42 chromosomes as the diploid condition, then trisomy means that you have an extra chromosome which is not paired and it's present in this combination. So trisomic refers to 2n plus 1. Now, what about monosomic? Well, in the case of monosomic, it's the exact opposite. Over here, there is the loss of one chromosome. So that means 2n minus 1 will be the correct scenario for representing a monosomic condition. So monosomy is 2n minus 1, which leaves us with the final condition, that is nullisomic. So what exactly is nullisomic? In monosomy, one of the chromosomes is missing. In nullisomy, what happens is that 2n minus 2 chromosomes are missing. 2n minus 2 chromosomes are present, so that means 2 chromosomes are missing. So 2 chromosomes constitute a pair, so that means one pair of chromosomes are missing if the plant is in the nullisomic stage. So therefore, option D is the correct option because 6n equals 42 for wheat. So haploid means it's 3n, 3n is 41, and 6n minus 2 gives you 40, that is nullisomic, plus 1 gives you 43, that is trisomic, minus 1 gives you 41, that is for monosomy. Next question. We need to find out which of these statements is the correct explanation for the phenomenon known as apomixis. So what happens in apomixis is that seeds grow to form plants with the exact same characteristics. And this is due to the fact that there is no variation occurring in apomixis. So we need to find out which of these options are correct. The first option says formation of seeds by fusion of gametes. Well, this is how normal sexual reproduction takes place, and it's called apomixis. So therefore, option A is not the correct option in this case. What about option C? Formation of seeds with syngamy but no meiosis. First of all, it's not apomixis, because then there won't be any gametes if there isn't any meiosis. And secondly, if there were to be any gametes without meiosis, then there will be only genetic material after few generations. So therefore, option C is not viable for producing the next generation. So option C is incorrect. So what about option B? Formation of seeds without syngamy and meiosis. So if there is no meiosis, then there is no formation of gametes. Without formation of gametes, there is no fusion of gametes. That means syngamy does not occur. So therefore, that means the nucellus provides a cell, and that divides to form the new seed, which has the same characteristic as that of the plant. So therefore, option B happens to be the correct option and the correct definition for the term apomixis. So apomixis is basically formation of seeds without syngamy and meiosis, so that means that there is no variation occurring because of the lack of fertilization and meiosis. So therefore, option B is the correct option. So that means option D also is incorrect, because it states none of the above are correct, whereas in fact option B is correct. Let's look at this question. The plant part, which consists of two generations, one within the other, is option A, germinated pollen grain, option B, embryo, option C, unfertilized ovule, option D, seed. So option D, seed, is incorrect, as it only contains the next generation. So it's basically consisting of the seed coat and then the embryo that's present within it that belongs to the next generation. So option D is incorrect. What about option C, unfertilized ovule? The unfertilized ovule is a part of the female reproductive system, so therefore option C is incorrect, as it belongs exclusively to the parent. The same goes for a germinated pollen grain, because the germination occurs as a result of interactions between chemicals of the male and female reproductive system, so therefore this is also exclusively parental. There is no two generations occurring in a germinated pollen grain, so option A is incorrect. The right answer is option B, the embryo. Now, how does the embryo represent two generations, one within the other? Because in lower plants, such as ferns, the embryo consists of a young plant attached to a parental gametophyte. So therefore, the correct option to be recognized here, the most appropriate one, is option B, embryo. In option D, seed, the entire apparatus has now become part of the next generation. That's why it falls from the main plant. So therefore, option B, embryo, especially of lower plants, is the correct option. I mean the most appropriate one. Next question. Chasmogamy refers to the condition where flowers remain closed, flowers are absent, flowers are open, flowers are gamopetalous. So which of these options are correct? Now let's look at option D. Flowers are gamopetalous. Now gamopetalous refers to the condition where flowers have fused petals. So therefore, option D is not correct, because gamopetalous refers to fused petals in a flower. Option A says that flowers remain closed in chasmogamy. Now, this is the direct opposite of chasmogamy. Flowers remaining closed is what we call cleistogamy, and this is the condition that favors inbreeding and also self-fertilization. That means autogamy. So option A is incorrect. what about option B? Flowers are absent. When flowers are absent in plants, we call them non-flowering plants. So therefore option B is incorrect. The correct option is option C, flowers are open. Chasmogamy is the condition where xenogamy is preferred, and xenogamy means pollination of a flower from pollen of one flower enters into the stigma of another flower which is present in a different plant. So xenogamy is the correct option. Xenogamy occurs when the flowers are open. So when the flowers are open, chasmogamy is the correct name for that condition. So option C is the correct option. Option C says that flowers are open, and the condition is called as chasmogamy. Next question. What is common between vegetative reproduction and apomixis? Now there are 4 options here. Both are applicable to only dicot plants. Both bypass the flowering phase. Both occur around the year. Both produces progeny identical to the parent. So we need to find out which of these options are correct. Now option A says both are applicable to only dicot plants. So the phase only dicot plants is incorrect. They can also occur in monocots. So it's not a specific trait of dicots. So therefore option A is incorrect. Option B, both bypass the flowering phase. Now this is incorrect because even though vegetative reproduction do bypass the flowering phase, apomixis still has a flowering phase. Because in apomixis, it's the nucellus of the flower. It's one of the cells of the nucellus of the flower that becomes the cell that divides and forms the new seed. So therefore option B is incorrect because for apomixis you need to have a flower. Now what about option C? Both occur around the year. So this is not a necessity. Some of them do occur around the year, but others don't. So therefore option C is incorrect. A great example for apomixis will be oranges. They only occur during the winters. And finally, option D, both produces progeny identical to the parent. Now this option is correct because in vegetative propagation we do not have sexual reproduction. It's asexual. So therefore the progeny is identical to the parent. And in apomixis we know that the nucellus divides to form the seed. So therefore the plant's genetic makeup is not being changed. So the progeny is identical to the parent. So that's the common thing between vegetative reproduction and apomixis. Both of them produces progeny which are identical to the parent plant. Option D is the correct option. Now let's look at this question. Emasculation is not required when flowers are A, bisexual, B, intersexual, C, unisexual, D, either A or B. So before going into this question, we need to know what is emasculation. So emasculation refers to the removal of the anthers of a flower to avoid it pollinating the stigma, or basically the female part. So when you want to get desirable breeds, the first thing you do with flowers that have anthers is to remove those anthers and then do bagging around them. So therefore emasculation occurs when you have both anthers and stigma in the same flower. So that means in bisexual flowers emasculation is a necessity. So option A is always incorrect because the question is asking about not requirement. So if it's not required, then bisexual has to be incorrect. Next, option B says intersexual. So that means if it's neither male nor female. This kind of condition does not occur in a flower. It's either male or female or has both. So it does not have another kind of... So intersexual does not refer to bisexual. So this is a completely different term. And that's why option B is incorrect. Option C says unisexual. So unisexual means only male or female. So if you have a unisexual flower, then you need to be careful. So emasculation is being done in order to protect the female flower. In a unisexual flower, the female flower stands by itself without any male component. So there are no anthers to the flower, so therefore the only thing that you need to do is to bag it. You don't need to do emasculation for a unisexual flower. So option C becomes the correct option for this question. So option D says either A or B. Since both A and B are incorrect, option D is also incorrect. So therefore option C, unisexual, is the correct option. So since the male part of the flower and the female part of the flower are in different areas, so therefore you don't need to do emasculation in order to protect the female flower from stray pollen. And that's why option C is the correct option. Now we have this question. It's an interesting one. It is asking us to identify which of these statements is the correct one for geitonogamy. So geitonogamy involves, option A says fertilization of a flower by the pollen from another flower of the same plant. B says a fertilization of a flower by the pollen from the same flower. C says fertilization of a flower by the pollen from a flower of another plant in the same population. Option D says fertilization of a flower by the pollen from a flower of another plant belonging to a distant population. So which of these is correct? Now options D and C are incorrect because here it says fertilization of a flower by the pollen from a flower of another plant. So whether that plant is in the same population or belonging to a distant population, it undergoes xenogamy. So both C and D are examples of xenogamy, so option C and D are incorrect. What about option B? Fertilization of a flower by the pollen from the same flower. So that means it fertilizes itself. The condition here is known as autogamy and not geitonogamy. So that means option B is incorrect. The right answer is option A. Fertilization of a flower by the pollen from another flower of the same plant. So basically the pollen is coming from another flower, but what happens is that the genetic makeup is same because it's from the same plant. So that's why geitonogamy is special in terms of pollination in plants. So option A, fertilization of a flower by the pollen from another flower of the same plant, is what we call geitonogamy. Now we've reached the last question of this episode. It says, which of the following statement is correct regarding sporopollenin? So brief introduction, sporopollenin is the exterior, it's the material that is present in the exterior of pollen grains. So this this sporopollenin can be easily fossilized because it does not degrade at all. So therefore sporopollenin is ideal for being used as the external covering of pollen grains. So the important point is that sporopollenin does not degrade at all. So now we know that point. Let's look at the following options. Option A states that sporopollenin can withstand high temperatures but not strong acids, which is incorrect. Option B says sporopollenin can be degraded by enzymes. This is incorrect, and that's the reason why we have sporopollenin on pollen grains. The reason for that is for protection. Sporopollenin cannot be degraded by any organic enzyme we know. Option C says that sporopollenin is made out of inorganic materials. Again, that is incorrect. Sporopollenin is found in pollen grains, so it's entirely organic, and it's the only organic material that cannot be degraded by enzymes. Option D says sporopollenin can withstand high temperature as well as strong acids and alkalis, basically enzymes, so therefore option D happens to become the correct option, which gives us the idea that sporopollenin does not degrade at all. So option D, sporopollenin can withstand high temperature as well as strong acids and alkalis, is the correct option here.